Hi, I'm Alice, and I'm 28 years old. I work with kids. Recently, my boyfriend Tom proposed to me, and now I'm visiting his parents for the first time. Tom went to a really good university and has a cool job. He's smart, and everyone at work likes him. I've always thought highly of him. His dad seemed happy about us getting married and even said they never had a daughter and that Tom's mom would be happy too. But when I looked at his mom, she seemed upset. She had a frown on her face, like she was mad about something. Then, out of nowhere, she asked me if it's true that I didn't finish high school. She seemed to think that because Tom is so successful, I shouldn't be good enough for him. I felt really surprised and hurt by what she said. I told her it was rude to talk to me like that, and Tom also defended me, saying that my education doesn't matter. Both Tom and his dad stood up for me against his mom. But my mother-in-law didn't seem to calm down. She kept saying that it's natural for a mom to worry about who her son is marrying, especially about their education and job. She even talked about how children inherit their mom's genes, so she wanted to make sure her future grandkids would be great too. It felt like she was really stuck on the idea that I wasn't good enough because I didn't finish high school. It's true that some people care a lot about education and parents want the best for their kids, but it made me sad to think I was being judged just because I didn't graduate. There's actually a reason for that. My dad died in a car accident when I was young, so my mom had a tough time raising me and my twin sister Emma. To help out, I started working after middle school. Now, I'm going to night school to finish my high school diploma. I'm working hard and saving money, and I might even go to college someday. Tom supports me in this, and he's even offered to help pay for my college. Tom understands where I come from, and he's really caring. That's one of the reasons I love him and want to marry him. But it seems like my mother-in-law doesn't like this idea. Tom is an only child, so we might end up living with his parents in the future. I'm a little worried about how things will go if my mother-in-law already seems so against me. A while after, I moved in with my future in-laws, just a month away from our wedding. As the big day got closer, I had to make more trips to the wedding place to double-check everything. I also had to book hotels for our out-of-town guests. With work, school, and wedding stuff, I was super busy. But my mother-in-law didn't seem happy with how I was handling everything. Today, I was getting ready to go to the venue and putting on makeup when she suddenly said, "Oh my, what are you wearing?" She saw my outfit and blurted it out. "I'm getting ready to go to the venue." "So I thought I'd dress up," I explained. I wasn't sure if she didn't like me dressing up for the venue or if she just wanted to criticize me. "Huh. You say you're going to the venue, but you're just dressing like that to attract men, aren't you?" "You're so careless," she accused. She just assumed I was meeting another man instead of going to the venue. I didn't know what to say. I told her I was meeting Tom at the venue and suggested she ask him if she had doubts. But she didn't listen and just kept thinking I was up to something. Then, out of nowhere, my mother-in-law messed up my carefully styled hair. "Hey, what are you doing, mother-in-law?" "I spent so much time getting ready. This is terrible," I exclaimed. My hair was a mess, and I couldn't go out like that. But instead of apologizing, my mother-in-law said, "There's no need to fix it. This hairstyle suits a high school dropout like you. You should wear your hair like this for the wedding." I was already late, so I quickly fixed my hair and rushed to the venue where Tom was waiting. When I got there, Tom saw my upset face and asked what happened. I was torn about whether to tell Tom what happened earlier, but I didn't want to bring up something so upsetting when we were supposed to be talking about the wedding plans. So, I decided not to tell him at that moment. Then, as the wedding day got closer, my mother-in-law came up with a surprising idea. She said, "Hey, Alice's mom lives far away, right? It must be hard for her to come and stay in a hotel. Why doesn't she stay with us?" Tom and I were both surprised by her suggestion. It would save money on hotels, and it could help our families bond better. Tom suggested I talk to my mom about it, so I did right away. My mom was really happy with the idea, and we decided that my twin sister Emma would come too. At first, I thought my mother-in-law was being nice, but I had no idea what she would do next. The day before the wedding, my mom and sister came to stay at my in-laws' house. Seeing them after such a long time made me really happy. My sister Emma and I are super close, so we decided to share a room for the night. Emma fell asleep quickly after having a few drinks. She's out like a light, I thought, knowing she wouldn't wake up easily. Just as I was about to go to sleep too, I heard the door to our room open. I was puzzled and then heard a buzzing noise, like someone was shaving something. Now you won't be able to go to the ceremony tomorrow, will you? No need for hair for a girl who didn't finish middle school, I heard my mother-in-law say. I was shocked and turned on the lights. Mother-in-law, what are you doing? I exclaimed. The person in the bed suddenly sat up, surprising my mother-in-law too. Huh, mother-in-law, you're Alice, right? She said, confused. She had mistaken me for Emma. That's not my hair. We're twins, and our faces really look alike, I explained. It turned out that it wasn't me whose hair got shaved, it was my sister Emma. What? How could this happen? It was supposed to be Alice, my mother-in-law exclaimed, clearly shocked. But Emma was still fast asleep, probably due to the drinks she had. When she wakes up and realizes her hair is gone, she'll be really mad. Emma's not one to hold back her feelings, so I knew she'd be furious. I can't cover for you on this, mother-in-law, I told her, feeling guilty. She probably left the room feeling uneasy. The next morning, Emma saw herself in the mirror and freaked out. She was furious about being bald. Our mom was there too and couldn't help but cry in shock. Tom was disturbed too, saying, "This is terrible. Who would do such a thing?" So, I decided to tell everyone what happened the day before. I was curious to see how my mother-in-law would react this morning, but she wasn't around. My father-in-law said she went for an early walk and hadn't come back yet. I started worrying that she might have run away, so I told her relatives everything and went to look for her. About 30 minutes later, a relative called me to say they found her at a nearby convenience store, so my father-in-law went there. My mother-in-law came back home with a bunch of excuses, unaware that she was being searched for. When she got home, she immediately said, "I didn't do anything wrong. It's all Alice's fault." Alice used the clippers on her own and shaved Emma's hair while she was sleeping next to her. I told everyone, shocked that she was trying to blame me. Don't be absurd. I didn't do anything. Weren't you the one who entered the room yesterday? It's ridiculous that you're still lying about it, I snapped, feeling frustrated by her denial. But my mother-in-law kept denying her involvement. Then my father-in-law seemed to recall something. He went outside and returned with something in his hand. "Alice, is this the clipper?" he asked, holding it out to me. When I looked at the clipper, I instantly recognized it as the one my mother-in-law used last night to shave off Emma's hair. That's it. That's the clipper. But where did you find it? I asked, feeling confused. It seems this clipper originally belonged to your father-in-law. He's always been particular about his appearance and carried grooming tools with him. When we checked his car, the compartment where he kept his grooming stuff was messed up. And the clipper was gone, my husband explained. I always keep my car keys in the bedroom. If there's brown hair in this clipper, then it's clear that your mom is the one responsible, my father-in-law added, beginning to take apart the clipper. Inside the clipper was unmistakably brown hair, which we knew belonged to Emma. She probably couldn't clean it properly because she had to rush out in the dark, my father-in-law concluded, displaying the hair to everyone. My mother-in-law sank to her knees. "Alice, it's all because of you. You tricked Tom, despite being uneducated and poor. I wanted you to leave Tom no matter what," she confessed. I felt sickened by my mother-in-law's selfish words, but the one who reacted the strongest was Emma, who had her hair shaved off. "I don't care what's happening to you," Emma said strongly. "What can we do now?" "I can't go to the wedding looking like this," she said, sounding upset. Emma's father-in-law heard her worry and called a friend who knew how to fix hair. They decided to bring a wig quickly. It would help Emma's hair look better for now. But they needed to find a solution for her mother-in-law too. 30 minutes later, the friend of Emma's father-in-law came with the wig, and Emma looked beautiful with her new hair. At first, they thought about cutting the mother-in-law's hair like they did with Emma, but they didn't feel right about it. Instead, they decided to reveal the mother-in-law's bad actions to everyone. At the wedding, there were some landlords who had been helping the mother-in-law's family for a long time. They were close to Emma's father-in-law, and hearing about what happened would surely affect the mother-in-law's parents. The landlords had been giving them a discount on their rent, but they might stop helping them once they found out about the mother-in-law's behavior. They might even make things worse by increasing the rent or making them leave the apartment. The mother-in-law's parents were poor and depended on this help. If they were forced to leave their apartment, they would have to stay with the mother-in-law. But from what Tom had said before, it seemed like the mother-in-law didn't get along with her parents and wouldn't want to take care of them. Living with her parents would be very difficult for the mother-in-law. Please wait, I'll be in big trouble if you do that. I'm really sorry, it was my fault. I got carried away and did something wrong. I'm sorry, Emma. I'll compensate you for the damage, so please forgive me. The mother-in-law kept apologizing over and over again, bowing down on the floor. But even with all the apologies, Emma's hair couldn't be fixed. After talking it over, they decided that Emma's father-in-law and Tom would tell everyone about what the mother-in-law did. Emma had already agreed to this. The mother-in-law said she didn't want to go to the wedding and tried to escape, but Emma and Tom stopped her. When they got to the wedding place, relatives who had heard of the situation through messages looked very worried as they approached us. We showed everyone what the mother-in-law did wrong, and Emma bravely took off her wig, revealing her bald head. Everyone was shocked, especially the women, who couldn't believe it. For a woman, her hair is very important, so imagine the shock of suddenly having it shaved off. Seeing Emma like this made some people cry. Then, as expected, the landlord came to the mother-in-law and asked if it was true. At first, she tried to lie, but Emma's father-in-law encouraged her to tell the truth, and she finally admitted it. The landlord was furious and also scolded the mother-in-law. After that, the mother-in-law looked sad during the rest of the ceremony, which was unusual for her. The wedding went well, and we were happy to have the blessings of many people. But we couldn't stay in the same house with the mother-in-law anymore. So we decided to move to our own apartment and start a new life as a couple. The mother-in-law panicked when she realized we were leaving the house. She cried and begged us not to go, but we couldn't stay with her anymore. Even the father-in-law felt the same way. He told her he wanted a divorce and asked her to leave the house. The mother-in-law looked scared and held onto the father-in-law, pleading with him to reconsider. She said she had nowhere else to go because she didn't get along with her own parents. She was trembling and looked like she might collapse at any moment. But I didn't feel sorry for her, considering what she did to Emma. I never expected someone to shave my head while I was sleeping, mistaking me for Emma. The mother-in-law kept trying to convince us to let her stay, but the father-in-law contacted her parents, and eventually she had to leave the house. Now, she's living with her parents, even though they have a difficult personality, and she's struggling to take care of them all by herself. The mother-in-law kept calling us, wanting to start over, but we didn't want to live with her again, so we blocked her calls. Now, we're living happily with the father-in-law in his old house. We decided to renovate it together. The father-in-law built his dream study, Tom set up a display area for his model figures, and I installed a modern kitchen. We also made a room for the child we plan to have in the future. Now, the three of us are living comfortably. Emma's hair, which was shaved off before, has grown back short and looks great. Her friends love her new look. She jokes about what happened, which sometimes makes me feel conflicted. Emma visits us for sleepovers sometimes, and I always look forward to that. Even though there might be challenges ahead, I believe we can overcome them together.
My name is Michelle, and I work in an office. I'm 31 years old, and my husband John is 33. We actually met through a friend's introduction, and now we've been married for 2 years. When I was growing up, I was pretty sheltered, being an only child. I went to a regular public school until middle school, but then I switched to an all-girls private school until college. You know how it is with all-girls schools. There's a lot of admiration among friends, but I never really thought about dating guys seriously. Sure, I went out with a couple of guys in my early 20s, but nothing really clicked for marriage. I always figured I'd meet someone eventually, but time flew by, and suddenly I was in my 30s. My parents started getting worried, especially my dad. He started suggesting I meet some guys he found on matchmaking websites, and one of those guys turned out to be John, my husband now. After we met a few times, John told me he had feelings for me. He's a really kind person who respects his parents a lot. I'm the same way, so I felt like we shared important values. That's why I decided to marry him. Our wedding was organized pretty quickly, and our families and friends were all there to support us. I was thrilled and hoped that our happiness would last forever. But not long after we got married, John's dad got sick and passed away. John started spending a lot of time taking care of his mom, which is totally understandable. He's always visiting her and even goes on trips with her. While he still cares about me, it sometimes feels like his mom comes first in everything. It's a bit frustrating, but other than that, things are okay. I guess this is just how marriage is, so I've learned to accept it and make compromises. Lately, I've been finding a lot of happiness in entering sweepstakes and winning prizes. It's been mostly little things like makeup and snacks. But then I hit the jackpot, a pair of tickets to Miami. I couldn't believe it when I got the call. It was the first time I ever won something so big. But then came the tough part, deciding who to take. John had just gone on a trip with his mom, and he usually pays for his own travels. So I thought, why not give this amazing opportunity to my parents? I hurried over to their house and shared the news. Guess what? I won a trip to Miami. Why don't you two go? My mom was ecstatic, saying it had been ages since they'd gone on a trip abroad. However, my dad didn't seem as excited about the trip. I've got work commitments, Michelle, he explained. But you still have some paid leave left, don't you? I countered. True, but this is a busy season for our industry, especially for me as the department head. Taking time off isn't easy. My mom then suggested, Michelle, if you can manage to get leave, why don't you and I go? I thought about it and agreed. You're right, Mom. It's too good of an opportunity to miss. Since my dad couldn't make it, I decided to ask my boss for time off the next day. Thankfully, work was slow, and I got permission without any trouble. After work, I swung by a bookstore at the station to pick up a guidebook on Miami, filled with excitement for the trip. As I neared home, I noticed the lights were already on. John must have gotten back home already, I realized. I better hurry up with dinner, I thought to myself. As I opened the door, instead of John's shoes, I spotted a pair of women's shoes I recognized. Michelle, what's the meaning of leaving the house empty at this hour? Scolded my mother-in-law. Oh, I didn't know you were here, I responded. It doesn't matter if I'm here or not. It's time for John to be home, and you should be preparing dinner and getting things ready for him, she lectured. Living nearby, she has a spare key, courtesy of John. I understand she feels lonely since her husband passed away, but her unexpected visits and presumptions of entitlement don't sit well with me. Plus, she holds on to old-fashioned beliefs about a wife's role, and she's not a fan of me working. Every time we cross paths, she finds something to criticize or make snide remarks about, which makes it difficult for me to warm up to her. Why the long face and the detour instead of coming straight home? She continued, You're such a useless wife. Let me see what you bought, my mother-in-law demanded. Please stop, I objected, but she ignored me and grabbed the bag containing the guidebook. What's all this? What do you plan to do in Miami? How extravagant, she exclaimed. No, it's a prize I won. I'm giving it as a gift to my parents, I explained. Well, nobody told me about this, she retorted. Just as we were arguing, John walked in. I'm back. What's going on? He asked. Welcome home, John. Michelle won a trip to Miami, my mother-in-law informed him. How thoughtless of you to give it to Michelle's parents without discussing it first. I would have loved to go, John said. I didn't know about the trip to Miami either. I was thinking of giving it to my parents, I responded. How many people can go on this trip? John inquired. It's for 2 people, I replied. You should have told me beforehand. I would have loved to go too. Why are you making decisions on your own? John questioned. I thought about going with just the 2 of us. But this time, I wanted to give it to my parents, I explained. You're mistaken. This time Mom and I are going, and you're staying home, John declared firmly, cutting off my protests. No way. I won this. I'm going to give it as a gift to my parents, I insisted. We can plan something else another time, right? Mom really wants to go, so please try to understand, I pleaded. What are you even saying? You just went on a trip with your mom not long ago. Why can't I use my own money to go on a trip? Anyway, this time Mom and I are going. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce, John declared, dropping the word like a bombshell. The mention of divorce from my husband, used as a threat, made me feel a sudden wave of detachment towards him. Fine, do as you please, I responded, deciding to step back. My husband and mother-in-law, oblivious to my internal turmoil, seemed pleased with themselves. You should have been more understanding from the start, they chided. Ignoring their smug remarks, I began to consider my next steps to address the situation. The following day, I sought counsel from my parents, sharing the ordeal with them. My mom, who had been excited about the trip, seemed disappointed, but she understood the situation. I understand. If that's how it is, we can't help it. It's better to avoid any tension between you two, so don't worry, she reassured me. Feeling guilty about letting her down, I decided to make things right. During my lunch break, I called the airline and requested to change the trip to Miami to include my husband and mother-in-law instead. However, the operator explained that once the reservation is made, changes aren't allowed, and the tickets are only valid for the winner. This was clearly stated in the documents they sent me. Realizing my mistake, I told the operator I would decline the prize. I chose not to tell my husband and the others about this and decided that if they really wanted to go, they could purchase tickets themselves. That evening, when my husband came home from work, he brought up the trip. "Hey, Michelle, did you call the airline? Did you tell them we're going to Miami with Mom?" he asked. I made the call and handed over the winning documents and tickets to my husband. "Here, take a look at these. All the details are in there. It's important to read them," I urged. Knowing he probably wouldn't bother reading them, I handed them over anyway. True to form, he just glanced at them and set them on his shelf. "Try to see this as a kind gesture for your mom," I suggested. "Sure, I'm more than happy to stay home. I can't wait to see their reactions," he agreed. On the day of the trip, John seemed unusually tense, as if something was weighing heavily on him. As the departure day arrived, John and his mother encountered delays at the airport. "What's going on? Can you explain this?" he demanded, looking at me with confusion and frustration. "As we've explained, these tickets are non-transferable, and if the winner isn't present, they become invalid. This is clearly outlined in our policy. Anyone else attempting to use them would need to pay the full fare," the airline representative reiterated. John and his mother had already splurged on luxury hotels, stretching their budget thin. Then, at the airport ticket counter, they encountered yet another setback. "I'm terribly sorry, but there seems to be an issue. Could you please try using a different payment method?" the attendant requested. "That's impossible. This card has been working perfectly fine. Why is this happening now?" John exclaimed in frustration. "I'm afraid we can't diagnose the problem here. You may want to contact your card issuer for assistance," the attendant advised. With no other option, John had to resort to using another credit card and then reach out to me. "Hey, what's happening? The tickets you gave us aren't usable, and now my credit card's been declined," he explained over the phone. "Did you bother reading the fine print on the ticket? It clearly states they're invalid if the winner isn't present. And as for your credit card issue, that's news to me," I retorted. "No, your card," John clarified. "Well, I've reported my card lost. I couldn't find it in my wallet, so I suspected you might have taken it. Thankfully, it hasn't been misused," I explained. "That's not amusing. You won't get away with this when we're back," John threatened. "That's entirely your own doing. What you did amounts to theft," I countered. "You know what, woman? I'm divorcing you." "Get out," John declared angrily. Fine. Just as I expected you'd say. As you wish. I'll agree to the divorce," I replied calmly. Truth be told, I had already planned to leave for my parents' house before John told me to go. I had already packed my bags, using the paid leave I had taken for this trip. As I left the house, I made sure to take the passbook and seal so he couldn't access our savings. I also informed the neighbors that we would be getting divorced. Upon reviewing our savings for potential division in the event of a divorce, I discovered that the funds had been depleted multiple times. I had no recollection of making these withdrawals, indicating that John was responsible. Further investigation, comparing the withdrawal dates with my daily blog entries, revealed that the money was withdrawn during the period when John and my mother-in-law were on vacation. I confided in my parents about John's proposition for divorce, his unauthorized use of my credit card, and his utilization of our joint savings for the trip with my mother-in-law. As I recounted the situation, my parents' expressions shifted from concern to sternness. "I can't believe John would stoop to such deceit. I'm deeply sorry. It's my fault for arranging your marriage," my dad apologized, bowing his head in shame. His anger towards John was evident. "This falls on my shoulders. Leave it to me," he assured me, taking responsibility. In reality, my dad held a high-ranking position at the parent company of John's employer and occasionally conducted audits. Despite another colleague being originally assigned, my dad rearranged his schedule at short notice to personally audit John's company. During the audit, he invited John's superior, an executive at the subsidiary, for a meal. Given the hierarchical structure, John's superior was visibly anxious, attempting to curry favor with my dad while struggling with nerves. During the meal, my dad took the opportunity to inform John's superior about my situation. In fact, my daughter is going through a divorce. It appears that the main issues stemmed from her husband's excessive dependence on his mother. If it were just that, I might have advised her to persevere, but it seems he also misused my daughter's credit card and depleted her savings without her consent. Under such circumstances, I couldn't in good conscience recommend reconciliation. By the way, your subordinate, or rather, former son-in-law, I suppose, is John. How has his performance been lately? My dad inquired. It's a busy time, but I haven't seen him much around the office, John's superior responded. Upon learning about my impending divorce from my dad, John's superior sensed trouble and decided to look into the matter further. John, being the son-in-law of the parent company's director, was well known within the company and received some preferential treatment. However, a closer examination might reveal more about his conduct. I'll arrange for a lawyer recommended by my dad to handle the divorce proceedings. You'll receive written confirmation soon, covering matters like alimony and property division, I informed John. John assured me that he wouldn't let things slide, but it seemed that neither he nor his mother would have an easy time upon their return from Miami. Sometime after John and my mother-in-law returned from their trip to Miami, John paid a visit to my parents' house. Michelle, what's this certified mail about? I'm strapped for cash. I can't afford to pay any alimony, and this property division, it's just a marital spat. There's no need to take it this far. I've apologized, so please come back, John pleaded. What are you saying? Have you even read the contents of the certified mail? Your mother's constant mental abuse, not to mention depleting our savings and attempting to use my credit card without permission. There's no way we can reconcile, right? I countered. Please, don't say that. Since you left, it's been difficult for both Mom and me. Have you been receiving icy stares from the neighbors, or have there been issues at work? John inquired, his demeanor stiffening. I suppose I hit the nail on the head, I remarked. How did you? Well, who knows? What do you think the reason might be? If you reflect on your actions, you might understand, I replied. I can't reconcile with you, and you'll have to face the consequences. Prepare yourself. Also, please communicate through the attorney from now on. If you persist in lingering, I'll involve the security company, John warned sternly. When I mentioned involving the security company, John finally relented and left with a heavy heart. In truth, everything John had come pleading about was orchestrated by my father and me. Before returning to my parents' home, I went to our neighbors and spun a tale about being kicked out by my husband and mother-in-law after they stole the plane tickets I had won in a lottery. Drawing from my past experience in the drama club during my student years, my performance was remarkably convincing. Since my husband and mother-in-law returned from their Miami trip, rumors and gossip have swirled around them in the neighborhood. My mother-in-law was mortified to learn from a local busybody that she was being shunned because of rumors like, "You took your daughter-in-law's winning travel tickets and threw her out, didn't you?" But now, it's your turn to hear the full story. Following this incident, my father initiated an investigation at my husband's workplace. It was discovered that my husband, who happened to be the son-in-law of a department head in the parent company, had been abusing his position. He frequently took time off during busy periods to travel with his mother-in-law, habitually arrived late or left early, and was even found to be embezzling company funds. Given the severity of his actions, he was promptly dismissed from his job. The company then issued a statement to all its employees, declaring an end to the preferential treatment previously extended to family members of senior staff. Thanks to the lawyer my father hired, my divorce proceedings unfolded smoothly, and I finally obtained my official single status. The savings my husband had depleted were divided evenly based on their original amounts before his spending spree, and I received fair compensation. My detailed blog entries served as evidence of his emotional abuse, validating my experiences. Feeling liberated after getting justice against my husband and mother-in-law, I didn't want to hoard the compensation from the divorce. Instead, I decided to indulge and treat myself. Coordinating with my father's company holiday, I planned a vacation, seizing the opportunity to embark on the overseas trip I had previously missed out on. Initially undecided on our destination, we eventually settled on Miami, taking into account my mother's preferences. Together with my parents, we meticulously planned our itinerary, anticipating days filled with exploring crystal clear seas, vibrant coral reefs, indulging in shopping, and relishing our long overdue family vacation. Recognizing the sorrow I had caused my parents through my divorce, I was determined to make amends and create lasting memories with them. While thoughts of remarriage were far from my mind at the moment, I remained open to the possibility of finding genuine companionship in the future. Uncertain about what lies ahead, I focused on the excitement of our upcoming trip with my parents, cherishing the present happiness and looking forward to whatever the future may bring. Our grandson is on his way home, so let's indulge in steak once more, right this moment. Quick, let's get the catering sorted at my in-laws. We treat ourselves to steak through catering once a month, a delightful tradition. Yet again, I find myself left out. How many times has this happened now? Every time we order, my mother-in-law conveniently overlooks my steak, leaving me empty-handed. She's quite assertive, and I just can't seem to stand up to her. I suppose I'll have to endure it once more. Just when I was about to resign myself to the situation, Grandma's actions feel particularly unkind. My name is Raina, a 38-year-old housewife without any remarkable talents. I resorted to a matchmaking service to find my current husband, Craig. Marriage seemed elusive until I met Craig, who shared my passion for movies. Our bond blossomed over movie dates, leading to a smooth courtship and marriage. Initially kind, Craig's demeanor changed after our son was born. Two significant changes altered the course of our lives. Firstly, our son's intelligence soared, excelling academically far beyond his age. Despite his brilliance, he faced bullying at school and eventually stopped attending. Encouraged by a teacher, he now studies at Cambridge University in England. The second change was moving into my in-laws' house due to my husband's work relocation. Living with my in-laws was a stark transition. My father-in-law's illness confined him to the hospital, leaving only my mother-in-law at home. As a former working woman turned housewife, adapting to this new life proved challenging, setting the stage for further difficulties ahead. Feeling under the weather, I was greeted on my first day in my husband's family home with a directive. "Work hard for me, young one," my mother-in-law said. Yet she appeared far from unwell, exuding more energy than me. "How old are you, mother-in-law?" I inquired tentatively. 64 this year, my husband replied, his tone tinged with annoyance. Despite her apparent vigor, in this household, her word was law. My husband's warning left me feeling isolated. It was evident my mother-in-law harbored hostility towards me, but I hadn't anticipated my husband's detachment. Even though our marriage had cooled, his abandonment stung. "Let's get to work," my mother-in-law commanded, thrusting an old mop and bucket into my hands. Surveying the dusty corners, I yearned to wield the vacuum cleaner. However, she insisted I tackle it all with the mop, rejecting modern conveniences. "Can I use the vacuum cleaner?" I ventured, hoping to address the dust efficiently. "No, stick to the mop," she curtly replied. Reluctantly, I agreed, concealing my frustration. As I began cleaning, I proposed we work together, but my mother-in-law intervened, asserting that my husband and she would rest while I toiled alone. Daunted by the size of the house, I realized the task was insurmountable solo. To compound matters, my mother-in-law added the chore of dishwashing to my already overflowing plate. Overwhelmed, I struggled to keep pace with her demands, feeling the weight of my new responsibilities bearing down on me. "I can't handle it all. The house is too big," I confessed, overwhelmed. In response, my mother-in-law offered a solution. "I'll permit you to use the vacuum for $10 every 10 minutes. How's that?" But the cost was steep, far beyond my means. Her disdain for my financial situation stung, branding me a poor daughter-in-law. My husband, silent and unhelpful, stood by as I endured her belittlement. He even criticized my mopping technique, insisting it was improper to converse while cleaning. The solitude we shared before moving in with his parents had transformed into a form of psychological abuse. Amidst the tension, my mother-in-law announced plans for steak, summoning catering. Though exhausted from cleaning and dishwashing, the promise of steak fueled my determination. I had invested extra effort into preparing for this moment, eagerly anticipating the reward. As the catered steak arrived, my excitement peaked, but my joy was short-lived. Despite my efforts, my mother-in-law declared there was no steak for me, leaving me crestfallen. The disappointment cut deep, shattering my anticipation and leaving me deflated. "I've cleaned the floors and done the dishes," I informed my mother-in-law, only to be met with dismissal. "That's only natural," she replied. "Consider it a token of appreciation for letting you stay. Think of it as paying a fee through your actions. Did you think you could live here for free?" Her words pierced through me, amplifying the sense of hellishness that had engulfed my life since moving into my in-laws' house to do my husband's work. Financially constrained and unable to afford living independently, I relied on a meager monthly allowance of $200 since getting married. After covering essentials and previous expenses, there was nothing left to save. The naive expectation of security as a housewife shattered in the face of harsh reality. As for dinner, my mother-in-law's unpreparedness spoke volumes. While they indulged in high-quality steaks, I was offered noodles. The stark contrast highlighted my subordinate status in the family. Even the act of washing the knife and fork after their meal was the closest I came to the steak. From the very first day, mistreatment became routine, leaving me mentally and physically drained. Amidst this despair, a rare call from our son studying abroad brought a glimmer of warmth. Praising my embroidery, he reminded me of my skills. His words, a balm to my soul, stirred emotions long buried under layers of neglect. But even in my moment of happiness, his keen perception sensed my trembling voice. A testament to his high IQ and psychological acumen, his concern mirrored the distance between us. Yet in his distant words I found solace, a reminder that amidst the darkness there remained a flicker of light. I couldn't believe how much my son had changed. He seemed to have an uncanny ability to see through my facade, sensing something was amiss with Dad. After a moment of silence, I summoned the courage to confide in him about the situation at my in-laws' house. Despite feeling ashamed for airing my troubles, having someone to confide in felt like a lifeline. "It's tough every day," I admitted, but he reassured me. "I'll come over once it's our vacation, and I've saved up some money from my part-time job," he promised, refusing to take no for an answer. With my son's imminent return home, time seemed to fly during our overdue phone call. An hour passed, leaving me feeling rejuvenated by his unwavering support. However, as soon as the call ended, my mother-in-law approached with a sharp glare. "That's quite a luxurious long phone call," she remarked, draining the energy I had gained from our conversation. Despite my apologies, she swiftly shifted the conversation to the upcoming block party, assigning me the task of shopping and making a reservation for steak catering. The day of the block party arrived, and guests began to gather. My mother-in-law, dubbed the president by everyone, was the center of attention. Amidst the festivities, she wasted no time in ordering me around, using me as her servant regardless of who was present. Some guests spoke up in my defense, urging my mother-in-law to treat me more kindly, but her threats silenced them, reminding them of their place in the community. Their initial support quickly waned under her influence, leaving me feeling even more isolated. It became evident that my mother-in-law's control extended beyond our house, permeating the entire area. Against her power, I felt powerless, a mere housewife unable to challenge her authority. The ordered steak arrived, and my mother-in-law joyfully arranged it on the table. Her choice was surprisingly lavish, accompanied by an array of high-end side dishes like caviar and truffles. Yet even amidst the opulence, she couldn't resist lecturing me. "Do you really think you deserve such fine steak as a wife? You're 100 years too early for that," she chided, her words a public humiliation. The sympathetic glances from those around us only deepened my sense of isolation. No one dared oppose her, not even my husband, who quietly savored his steak. Hope flickered within me, hoping for even a small portion of the steak. But my mother-in-law's words dashed those hopes, offering beef noodles instead. Upgraded from the ordinary, but still far from what I craved. Frustration simmered beneath the surface until it boiled over, and I couldn't contain it any longer. "Mother-in-law, this is too much," I exclaimed, my voice breaking the tension. "I've prepared everything for today's block party, and yet you treat me like this." Her response was swift and harsh, shutting down any semblance of rebellion. "Is this true, Reina? Couldn't you show a little kindness?" My husband interjected, hoping to diffuse the situation, but his words fell on deaf ears as my mother-in-law's resolve remained unshaken. Silenced by her intimidation, no one dared challenge her authority. In that moment, it became painfully clear that in this household her word was law, leaving me to navigate a world where my desires and efforts were constantly undermined. Remember, you must obey mother in this house. My husband's sudden, authoritative voice echoed through the room, causing my body to instinctively flinch. The once lively atmosphere fell silent, and even those who had supported me began to echo his sentiment, filling the room with resounding agreement. Frustrated and overwhelmed, I fled from the scene, seeking solace in the sanctuary of my bedroom. Time seemed to blur as I locked myself away, the weight of the situation bearing down on me until exhaustion claimed me. When I awoke, the block party had dispersed and the night had fallen. Glancing at my phone, I found an email from my son announcing his imminent arrival. Despite the exhaustion, I drifted back to sleep, awaiting his return. The next morning, I found my mother-in-law in the kitchen preparing breakfast. Without preamble, she remarked on my behavior from the previous day, her words cutting through the air. Informed of my son's impending visit, she immediately pivoted to plans for steak, eager for his return. As evening descended, my son finally arrived home, greeted by a table laden with lavish steaks. Despite his usual enjoyment of the meal, he couldn't help but notice my absence from the feast. Concerned, he questioned my mother-in-law, only to be met with a dismissive response. "It's fine, Rihanna is always like this," she waved off his concern, redirecting his attention to the meal before him. Despite her apparent happiness at being reunited with her grandson, my son's response was unexpected, his words laden with a depth of emotion I hadn't anticipated. "I don't want it. Why didn't you prepare mom's portion? This is discrimination, isn't it?" My son's cool demeanor caught both my mother and husband off guard, their surprise evident in their expressions. My mother-in-law, taken aback by his unexpected assertiveness, began to panic, denying any wrongdoing. "What did you hear?" "I didn't do anything," she stammered, but my son remained steadfast, unmasking her behavior with unwavering confidence. "You're always looking down on mom, aren't you? People like that usually lack confidence or have nothing to be proud of, so they attack others to feel superior. It's a mean personality," he countered, his words piercing through her defenses. As my son continued to confront her, my mother-in-law found herself increasingly cornered, her usual tactics rendered ineffective against his insight. "That's true, isn't it? Everyone has an equal share of steak, but mom has nothing." "This is clear discrimination," he asserted, his logic irrefutable. Normally, such confrontation would escalate into a fight, but my son's demeanor remained composed, far beyond his years. With each observation, my mother-in-law grew more subdued, her usual confidence waning in the face of his scrutiny. "You're panicking. Your eye movements, habits, and amount of sweat tell the story," my son continued, revealing his studies in psychology at Cambridge University and his keen observation skills. Despite her attempts to maintain composure, my mother-in-law couldn't conceal her discomfort, her facade crumbling under his scrutiny. Watching the exchange unfold, I marveled at my son's poise, while my husband observed in silence. As the tension lingered, my son's final words hung in the air, leaving us all to ponder the implications of his observations. The tension in the room was palpable as my son fearlessly confronted my mother-in-law. "Grandma, do you have any talents?" he asked, his tone cutting through the silence. My mother-in-law, usually quick with a retort, found herself at a loss for words as my son continued, unrelenting. "What you did, Grandma, was unfair. Mom excels in embroidery. Her work could even sell in England," my son praised, surprising me with his acknowledgement of my hobby. "You, Grandma, have none, yet you try to belittle Mom and assert dominance. Is it because you can't accept someone being superior?" As my son's words struck home, my mother-in-law remained speechless, unable to refute his observations. "And what about you, Dad? Why didn't you stand up for Mom when she needed help? Were you unable to stand up to Grandma because she's your mother? If so, why did you marry her?" My husband, caught off guard by our son's probing questions, could only offer silence in response. My son's relentless critique didn't spare anyone, exposing the underlying dynamics of our family dynamic. "You both just want to feel superior and look down on others," he concluded, leaving my husband and mother-in-law speechless. I couldn't help but feel proud of my son's maturity and insight. His suggestion to move to England together took me by surprise, but his reasoning soon became clear. "One of my classmates has a father who's a Hollywood actor. He saw pictures of your embroidery and wants to buy your work. There's a waiting list of over 200 people eager to purchase your pieces," he revealed, his smile contagious. Overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events, I couldn't help but feel grateful for my son's unwavering support and encouragement. With his guidance, perhaps a new chapter awaited us, one where our talents were celebrated, not diminished. As my son shared his unexpected news, both my mother-in-law and husband listened with astonished expressions. "Mom, I've taken the liberty of arranging something for you. They want you to open a store with your handmade crafts in the UK," my son explained, his eyes shining with excitement. The thought of turning my hobby into a job, especially in England, left me speechless. While my mother-in-law and husband expressed their disbelief, I found myself considering the possibility. If I was going to face harassment at my in-laws' house anyway, why not pursue my passion as a profession? Moreover, the strained relationship with my husband made staying there unbearable. So, I made up my mind. I'll give it a try. I accepted, much to the shock of my family. And then, I dropped a bombshell. "I'm divorcing you. I'm tired of being oppressed by your mother. Let me be free." With that, my husband reluctantly agreed, and my mother-in-law ranted until the end, but I paid her no mind. The divorce was finalized without fuss, and I was finally free from the confines of my in-laws' house. Now, in England, I'm busy preparing to open a shop, insisting on crafting all the products by hand. Despite the initial fear of moving abroad, my son's wholehearted support makes the journey less daunting. Meanwhile, back home, I heard from my son that my former mother-in-law stumbled and ended up in the hospital. With her incapacitated, my ex-husband struggles to manage alone, taking on extra work to cover expenses. While it's a challenging time for them, I hope they find their way forward. As for me, I'm focused on the future, working on the final pieces for the shop's opening. With my son by my side, I feel confident in facing whatever challenges lie ahead. From rescuer to the rescued, our roles have shifted, but as a mother, I'll always support my son, just as he supported me.